how long is the War Within?
Okay.
Because I think this is something that people, because I saw someone mention it in chat earlier, why is the leveling so short? Why is the story in the War Within that we've been shown so short? Because you open up and the Isle of Dorn is 3 chapters. And that's maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. Depends on how like fast you go and how much you read.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'll read everything. I'll stop to not really smell the roses on alpha. There aren't really many roses, but I'll stop to like read things and pay attention to what's going on around me, stuff like that. So these are taking me roughly 2 hours a piece. And that's Isle of Dorn's about 2 hours. It's going slowly. Then you go to the Ring of Deeps, and it's also 3 chapters, which really isn't that long. Hall of Falarathi, 3 chapters. That one, I don't know if it's longer or if it just feels longer. Because I feel like it's the longest of the lot, but that might just be because more stuff happens.
Yeah.
That's of more note. It's clearly where they put a lot of like the actual, a little bit more of the effort in, and it's a little bit more finished than the rest of the zones. And then Ashkahet is 3 again. All right, 12 chapters, so you're like, what, like 6.5, 7 hours of content? Maybe 8 if you're slow? That seems about right, but also, it's really short.
I think Blizzard's intent is you pretty much follow that straight to max level on your first character. Maybe add in 1 or 2 side quests, each zone if they sort of tickle your fancy. And that's kind of that. I mean, that's pretty much what Dragonflight feels like now.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have definitely they've been going shorter. They definitely realize that World of Warcraft in modern day is very played at endgame. And I have a suspicion that they see the renown bar existing at max level. Well, I mean, obviously it's always there, but I think they see the renowns and how the renowns will mean that doing side quests doesn't feel pointless at endgame as basically an excuse to not pace things so that you have to do all of the side content to hit max level. Because certainly in, way back in older expansions, you couldn't just do the main quest. You had to do side quests and other things to actually get enough XP to level up. But that's not really been the case.
Things can change, but it's sort of the same here where, like, they plop you in at, like, say, for Ring of Deep 73, 71, 73, 75, 78, and it was, you finish a campaign, you're nowhere near close to the next jump. So they do intend you to do at least a couple dungeons, a couple side quests. And that was with me, like, doing dungeons sometimes.
Well, actually, that'll be some of it.
Mm.
If they are going to see doing a dungeon as a part of doing the campaign or doing a delve as a part of the campaign, that also beefs it out a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess it's that thing. Is this a design decision? Is this a production decision? Is it both?
So the reason I bring it up more than anything else is I think obviously like it's fairly standard for what we have like leveling wise, right? They haven't thrown anything out or made anything massively in the leveling experience. But what they have done is, well, actually, I'll frame it differently. What happened to the story in Dragonflight when you finished the Thaldraszus campaign?
Yeah, you finish it. And then Alex Straza says, "Good job, champion." And then a little pop-up appears in your screen saying, "Adventure mode unlocked."
Yeah.
And that's it. So you basically, you go to the... I've forgotten the name. I was about to call it the seat of the triumvirate. No, that would be odd. What's it called? The big flipping dragon pole that they're all on. The big tower in Valdrac.
I don't know what it's
the
called.
Seat of the Aspects.
That's what it's called.
There we go, yes.
You were close with the triumvirate. Except with the pentumvirate. Whatever, because there's 5 of them.
You go to the pole of the pentumvirate.
Yeah.
And well, that's what you do. After that, though, it's really... That's where Dragonflight is strange, and it's actually the number one thing that I want to see different in this expansion. So you finish off time shenanigans, and then you go to Alex Straza, and she's like, "Good. Whatever, you're max level now, go away." And from that point, you're getting your sparks via the Spark quest. And then via the Renowns, you have a few other campaign quests. But the campaign quests are playable in mostly any order between, like, Greens, the Valdrakken Accord ones with Tyr, and the Explorers League ones. So they don't actually... I mean, overall, it's like in parallel, a cohesive narrative is happening. But it's not, like, experientially, it's very bitty. So I think thinking about what I would want from this expansion and the story at Endgame is definitely, I don't want to say more linear, but I do want the main campaign to be more cohesive and sort of just telling the main story instead of that weird thing Dragonflight did, where it just kind of ticked all of these different boxes, but experientially it didn't really feel like storytelling. It just felt like little bites.
Right. So
It was a very rambly...
yeah.
In case you can't tell, it's very warm.
So
very uncomfortable.
and Shadowlands is much the same, right? Where you finished your 4 zone stories and then they were like, hey, unlock your legendaries and go play the game now. And BFA, if I remember correctly, that was a long time ago, it was kind of the same too. It was, here's your zone stories. Okay, then your story will continue with the patches.
Yes, the war campaign, or whatever it was called.
What about Legion?
Class Halls. Suramar.
Mm-hmm.
Suramar.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your segue?
So what I haven't been scrolling down to this whole time is that you've got 12 chapters.
You've been having us on this whole time,
And
man.
then you have an additional 5 chapters at max level.
Against the current, ties that bind, news from below, the machines that march to war, and something else. Because it says 0 to 5 chapters, but there's only 4 there.
Yeah, well, clearly one missing a name.
Yeah.
So that's something that I thought was very interesting finishing the campaign. Because I was like, right, well, that's kind of weird we're stopping here. Because, no spoilers, but it is ultimately you are on one big, grand mission. And you're going to different places and solving out other people's problems. Full standard RPG story stuff. Where it's like, I've arrived in an area. The thing I need is here. Oh, I have to gain the trust and companionship and help people out.
Do they feel airlocked from each other? Dragonflight felt a little bit.
They don't feel massively cohesive, but there is a through line.
Better than with Dragonflight.
Substantially better with Dragonflight.
Good, okay.
So there's like a literal through line of you start in the Isle of Dorn. The events of the Isle of Dorn take you to the Ring of Deeps. The events of the Ring of Deeps takes you to the Hollowfall. The events of Hollowfall takes you to Azkahet. And then you finish this, and then you'll be like 78, 79, and go, okay, well, all right, we'll figure out your, we'll figure out how to get to 80, and then there'll be continuation.
Yeah,
now, as to whether this continuation is a bunch of separate stuff or one linear campaign, we have no idea.
So, I know what it isn't. It isn't gated behind the Renounce.
It's,
They said in an interview that they're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that actually, because I did replay the end of Thaldraszus, just getting rep on one of my ults, and there's no spectacle. I mean, you do a fairly cool quest where you're going back into the past and all of that, but there's no like, this is the end of the campaign and a big thing has happened. Like, there's absolutely nothing like that. And you think about just about any other story or any other game, and the last few quests in the last zone is generally some sort of like big encounter against a threat, big spectacle. It's the ending of the main campaign. How does it feel with Azkahet? Does it just finish, or does it feel paced?
It finishes on a decent spectacle, but then is left hanging.
Okay.
It's like a cool thing happens, and then like, oh, well, we're now here in the story. We now have to go and sort something else out. We'll reconvene at a slightly later stage to figure out what's going on. That's kind of that's the state it is. That's the state
So
it's in.
That seems like an improvement.
I'm really excited. I don't know if they're going to test any like level 80 stuff, like story wise, but honestly, I'm like, this is kind of much better than what we've had before. And like, I like Legion, but Legion was also 4 separate zones ish, because they were very specifically go get the doohickeys from the doohickey zones.
Yeah, and the whole design
order,
was you could do them in any order.
Yeah, BFA was the same with 3 separate zones,
which is
and then Shadowlands the same with the 4 zones,
which is insane.
Yeah.
Shadowlands the first time was linear.
Yeah, it was linear. It just
didn't feel like it
didn't
at all.
matter being linear. That was a decision they made well after they made them.
Yeah.
Or halfway through, because there wasn't an awful lot of like linear storytelling through them. There was a tiny bit, if I remember correctly, but there wasn't a huge amount.
It is really odd the way that just for a whole period of time, and right after they did a really good job of the campaign of Warlords of Draenor, They forgot that a story has a start
Yeah.
and a middle and an end, because that's exactly what WoD was. And I think the ground was definitely a weaker zone, but the first like 2/3 of Warlords of Draenor, like, it felt like a pretty well paced narrative.
Yeah, this is not Warlords of Draenor tier, unfortunately. It is somewhat better than before, but not as good as that. It's not better than Warlords. You can't be better than Warlords. Warlords is the best they've ever done it. They had loads of stuff happen and it was all cool as hell. They have some stuff happen here, but less of it is cool. There's less that actually matters kind of happens. It's mostly introduction and mostly stuff like that.
Well, I have a feeling what helps them in a time like that is going back to Warlords of Draenor. It's people we know. Like, yes, we're seeing them for the first time, but it's AU stuff. So I didn't think there was as much like introduction and establishment needed. They mostly just they didn't have to spend ages and ages and ages on introducing a bunch of characters. Lots of them we already sort of had known, which this will have as a little bit of a problem. But for Last Titan and Midnight, those are in places we've been to before. So I'd hope at least that can just free them up to kind of play with their toys more than establish and describe what's in the toy box. And you're sort of having to do lots of setup and exposition. Not that there's a lot of that in a bad way from what I've played, though.
Yeah, certainly.
Definitely short and sweet is the mantra that they're going with.
Short and sweet and reasonably dense.
Mm-hmm.
It's more dense. Maybe it could literally be a little bit more shallow and last a little longer, but I guess we come up against the struggle of constantly having leveling campaign being your story without, because they're never going to say, right, this is just a big ass story. This is just 20 hours of story, knuckle down and get into it, because people wouldn't enjoy that. So they're caught up against that. I'm hoping that whatever the 5 chapters at the end is will actually go, okay, well, you leveled up. What do you want to do? If you want to go do the Mythic Plus, hell grind, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to jump into PvP, go for it. If you want to do whatever you want. If you want to go play your end game, you can do that. If you want to now experience the story, you can go do that. And I feel like that might be a healthier way for them to operate in future.
I'd be happy.
And I don't know what this is, but I really hope it is that. Because if this is the same idea as the one campaign per thing kind of thing that the Renown was in Dragonflight, if it's this but not tied to Renown and just there's a story, there's a continuation story in each zone, I would hope it lines up. Yes. But we're at a point where when the story ends, you're nowhere near the end of the story. If you follow, you set out a bunch of goals and an end point, and you're like, well, by the time you're level 80, you're nowhere near that end point. Not even I think in traditional story terms, I'd be like, you're still in Act 1.
Gotcha.
Which is interesting to see how they're going to approach it entirely. On the other, are they going to go for the same approach they did with Dragonflight, which is our expansion story is an expansion story, which means you get some of it in 11.0, you get some of it 11.1, you get some of 11.2, you get some of 11.3, and then it ends in in 11.3, I suppose, and then you move into Midnight. There's a little bit of are they doing that again? I think they seem to be doing that.
11.3.
Sorry,
are you mad?
Sorry, yes.
You inventing more patches?
I forgot. Yes, whoops. I forgot we live in a 2-patch expansion cycle now, but yeah, I feel
I know what you mean.
That's my major worry right now. But in terms of there's a decent amount to actually do here. It feels a little short if you just bomb through, but there's a whole ton of stats. So here's an example actually. This is kind of slightly. I'm not going to spoil any events, but I know people don't like to know what's not in or what even slightly is because they like it. So I'll give you 3 seconds to meet, and then I will say that the Harrownir,
yes,
are basically not in the main story of Ash at all. They show up, and then they're in side quests. But you're introduced to Orwyn when she does a thing, and then you don't see them again at all.
See, that can be playing with fire.
Yeah.
Recently, again, I've just been clearing the map on my alt and doing all of the rebel quests.
Yeah.
The rebel quest line is there in Thaldraszus. It's just the main quest doesn't, the campaign doesn't ask you to do any of it. And then that's kind of awkward because I think it's one of the reasons why for most people the primalists may as well not have existed. They were just these like random angry shamans we dealt with sometimes. Now, if you do all the side quests in Thaldraszus and in other zones, you'll see way more primalist activity. But because it's optional, it therefore can't really be part of the main story. And that then led to the main story never selling sort of on its own, selling their primalists as a threat. So it can be a challenging thing.
They struggle with that big time because now's a good time to talk about some primalists. The Sins of the Sister quest that they added in 10.2.7, that is basically, you know, this night elf is, I'm not going to say who, but like they're night elf. This night elf is, you know, finds out her sister was a primalist. And then it kind of digs into, well, what are the primalists doing now? And believe it or not, they're actually, they're in jail. A very nice jail. They're up at the north end of Amirdassil with wardens guarding them, but they're allowed to like tend to plants and stuff and help out.
Swedish jail.
Yeah, so basically Swedish jail.
Okay.
They're in Swedish jail, but they're not in actual jail. And there's a little bit of, you know, fuck these guys. They were horrible traitors. But also, you know, we don't do what we used to. We don't throw people in jail for 10,000 years in the underground dark place. They are, you know, a little bit nicer. But going through that quest line, they do kind of explore a little bit of them where they are now. I think that's kind of it did a decent job to me of like wrapping up the primal story stuff. It's just we didn't get the start.
Yeah.
We got the end, but we didn't get the start.
Do you feel like that problem's happening as much here? So just think about like playing Dark Art.
Possibly.
Like,
it's hard to know.
With Dark Art, we do seem to have got the start.
It's hard to know. It's because the focus is so much on our core cast of characters, which I think is a big improvement.
Okay.
I don't know because I literally don't know what's going to happen. I can't know what they haven't set up.
Yeah.
If they haven't set it up. And there's a lot of things that feel like it could be set up or it could not be. It's like because someone asked there, you know, are the Harneer going to be important in the patch or during in-game quest content?
No idea.
Might as well actually move to talk about the Harneer off that because we don't have anything in our document.
I guess just finally just to cap that off.
Yeah.
So
right.
overall with the campaigns and
Yeah.
what you played so far, you're more positive than Dragonflight.
Yes.
Therefore, I shall infer you're also more positive than Shadowlands.
Yes. This is probably this is the best level up campaign they've done story wise since Warlords. Easy and free.
Good.
Easy and free.
Okay, good. Because that had been a serious and almost kind of inexplicable weakness for years.
Yeah.
That it had been so good in Warlords and that, well, I think actually...
Like, it doesn't hold a candle to Warlords, but it is notably better than the, 4 expansions we just had.
I think we know a little bit of why that is for some of the more recent expansions in how the teams are divided.
Yeah.
Was it like zones having different leads and... it's like some of the reason why zones are not super cohesive in their narratives tends to be they are made in parallel, often to in isolation.
Yeah, so these are clearly made in isolation as zones, but not that much in isolation compared to history because obviously like the Isle of Dorn and the Ring of Deeps are both about a different faction of the Earthen, so they have to interplay a little bit.
Yeah.
Now there are a couple of issues that maybe I would need to replay to be sure because I need to do Dornogal again or the Isle of Dorn again with the context of knowing the Ring of Deeps to know why my brain doesn't quite put the two and two together. They feel a bit slightly disconnected. That might just be a me thing though. I'm fully admitting that. The Arathi feels like a very different zone to the other two, but the thing is that you're following like your characters and you're following a chain of events that's actually taking you from one to the other. It feels a little bit better.
So we're literally just going deeper and deeper, right?
Not quite deeper and deeper, but basically.
Okay.
Not deeper and deeper, but like deeper and deeper.
Gotcha.
In that we're not digging into the heart of the planet. It's like, Hollowfall is connected by a tunnel to Azkat, so you go a little bit down. And like you physically move as part of the story. You and your cast of characters are moving from zone to zone, which is except for the first one. which actually makes it way nicer.
So I suppose it does feel like a quest.
It feels like it's one big quest with loads
Good.
of step offs.
That's what we want.
It's just maybe not as cohesive as you would expect off like a single player story game.
Yeah.
It's not quite as cohesive as that, which is quite nice.